Okay, hi everyone. Can I ring a bell? How's it going? Have some lunch?
Yeah.
How was it?
Delicious.
Delicious, right? Good food in Brighton, right? So I've learned. Oh, by the way, how was that meditation we just did before?
More, please.
All right, more?
More. That's not really an answer, is it? It was up, yeah.
So what you're saying is that you liked it so much that you're attached to it, and now you are.
I didn't say that. I was
That's not what you said. That's just what
I said. That's what you're adding. What I'm saying is I would like to practice more, and that was a lovely practice.
I think I got attached.
Sorry?
I got attached personally.
Ah, nice. It's good attachment. Yeah, it's good attachment.
Skillful design.
Okay, anyone else?
I really liked repeating.
Okay.
I can't remember the words.
May I be happy?
I'm happy.
May I be happy?
May I be happy.
Yeah.
Because generally you go through the kind of the various phrases,
Right,
and then I kind of get lost in them.
right.
And it's easier to focus by repeating it, almost like a mantra.
That's right, yeah. Keeping it very, very simple and focusing, using the words to somehow focus you on the feeling and allowing the feeling to come. Did you feel the feeling of metta at all?
Momentarily.
Nice. Excellent. Sadhu. Fantastic. What about you, Anne? How'd you go?
I really enjoyed it.
You did?
Yes.
It's okay if you didn't. If it was terrible, you can say so.
It wasn't terrible. I really enjoyed
Okay, good.
it. And I felt something, but I don't know what it was.
Well,
Lightness.
if you felt something, then we can, I think, authoritatively conclude that you're not a machine or robot or AI, but actual human. So that's good.
Yes.
Anyone else? Yeah, Chi.
I had a thought during it that actually there's no way if I'm by myself I can have a metta practice like this, that was my thought was when I practice metta by myself. It's not usually so light and
Okay.
just so that was one of my kind of like during the reviewing process at the end, that was one of my final conclusions.
Okay. So why do you think that is? Like, why do you...
It's just different when I do it by myself. I don't know why. I just know it doesn't feel so light, and
So there was a lightness there, which you don't normally find. Is that right?
Usually, when I do metta, especially if I do it for a long time, it starts to feel a bit sticky.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe the.
No. I know exactly what you mean.
Stickiness.
Yeah. Okay, so we're free of stickiness.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So you know that came from you anyway, right? So even though the surroundings are different and so on, but the actual metta and so on that's all you. So you can find that wherever you are, right? You don't look completely convinced, which is good. I like a skeptic. Anyway, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, in my personal life at the moment, it's very difficult. And so metta is, just in my small world at the moment, this is a very appropriate topic.
Okay.
And so in that practice, there was some, fluffy metta feelings, but also some emotional difficulty starts to arise, which is fine. But I wondered if you could share your thoughts on using metta as a healing vehicle.
Don't. Yes.
Don't.
Yes, don't.
Can you expand on that? Why not?
Using metta as a healing thing. Well, number one, okay? Now, don't take this personally, right? But I really dislike that way that we use language. I'm going to use love. It's not a spanner, okay?
Okay, yeah.
Right? It's not. It's love. It's the sublime tenderness of the human heart. We're not going to use it to get something. Right? It is the something.
Yeah. No. I get you.
Yeah. So this is a way of thinking about meditation which has become very, very prevalent. Thinking about meditation as something which is utilitarian, something which is industrialized, something which is process-oriented, something where and people use this kind of language all the time. They say, oh, you have a meditation toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
Yuck. Or you have like all this kind of way of using it, of using language. Meditation is the most sublime aspiration of human potential, and we should be uplifting ourselves to meditation and to raising our own conception of what the potential for human transformation is. Yeah.
No, I like that. Thank you.
Yeah. So when we are practicing metta meditation is for as we were talking about before, like for realizing our own capacity for metta and developing and enhancing that. Now, let me say a few things about metta, okay? Number one is metta is very childlike. Metta is very simple. Yeah? May I be happy. That's it. Metta doesn't know anything about suffering. Doesn't know anything complicated. Just may I be happy. That's it. Yeah? And so when we're doing metta meditation, literally anything else is a complication, right? And that's not the place for metta meditation, okay? So in a little while, we're going to be doing some metta for somebody else. We'll do metta for a loved person as well, right? And when we're doing metta for a loved person, it's important to not choose for that loved person somebody who you have some kind of perverse, twisted love-hate relationship with, okay? So one of my favorite teaching moments was when I mentioned this bit. I was in Singapore and there was this young couple in the front row and they immediately looked at each other when I said that. I was like, oh, that's so cute. I was like, that's adorable. They are so self-aware, right? I thought, oh, that's really lovely. And so metta meditation is not the time for working out all of that stuff. It's the time for being playful and simple and childlike, yeah? And just allowing yourself to feel those simple, innocent, wholesome feelings that so often get left behind in childhood and get kind of whittled away with every bill you have to pay and every form you have to fill in and all of those things. So when you're meditating and when all of those kinds of issues arise, then the thing to do is to say, okay, have a bit of compassion. Okay, I can see that's coming up. Now's not the time for you, and just put you aside, yeah? Put those issues aside or whatever it is. Just say, okay, and now's the time for developing metta. So to be very clear in your purpose when you're developing the meditation. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Good. Anyone else have any other questions or thoughts? Yeah.
So when I was doing it, I felt a pleasant feeling. It would kind of mask the pain that I have, physical pains that I have already. So it kind of overpower them for a while. My question is should we try and differentiate between the different kinds of pleasant feeling that can arise, or any pleasant feeling, just let it?
Yeah.
I mean, what is metta and what is in the mind and what is in?
I wouldn't worry about it too much. Yeah, you'll learn from experience. Yeah, just keep on practicing, and if the words of metta are there, and if the intention of metta is there, and then the feeling will come along eventually. And so the thing is, of course, the metta feeling isn't anything, actually. Right? It's not like there's a particular thing which is this thing and it's not that other thing. It's just a feeling, and feelings come and go. So the longer you go, then the more pure and the more precise you'll be in understanding it. Yeah, but you don't have to like sort it out from the beginning. If it feels nice, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Just in other metta practices, I've learned that they would use other phrases like "may you be happy, may you be well, may you be peaceful, may you be safe," or "I." So I'm just wondering if we can, when you teach it, do you teach the other aspects, or do you just teach the happy? I mean, for some people, happy, although everybody wants to be happy, might be problematic, especially if they're feeling, say, unhappy, particularly unhappy. It might feel maybe a little forceful to keep saying, "may you be happy," if you've got something really uncomfortable happening, but maybe well, maybe safe, might be more gentle aspiration. So I'm just wondering if you usually bring those other ones in.
No.
Never.
No.
Only focus on the happy.
It's amazing how complicated we want to make meditation. Just keep it.
In the Metta Sutta, there's a bit more to it, isn't there?
Well, there is, but anyway, look, no, we just keep it simple. Yeah, just keep it simple. Honestly, this is something that comes up again and again in retreats and things like that. And the problem is, like the number one problem is that as soon as people start playing around with all of those things, they immediately say, "Oh, why don't I do this?" or "Why don't I do that?" And the thing that they're doing is actually not metta anymore. It's something else. Yeah, but they don't realize it because they haven't actually practiced metta. So just give it a go. If you don't like it, do something else. If you're interested in those other practices, then try those other practices. But for this practice, this is how we do it. Yeah, I promise you, it's fine.
Really, if we want to wish the people their sort of safety, you're saying go for that.
I'm saying that in this particular practice, the words that we say to ourselves are, "May I be happy." Yeah. Yeah. Don't get hung up on words. Yeah. This is the thing. You can keep on chasing the words around and they'll just always keep eluding you. But if you're content, then it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Yeah.
Taking on board what you said about not getting caught up in words. What is happiness when you say it?
It's the thing that you feel when you wish, "May I be happy." Yeah, don't worry about it. I want to get T-shirts made with that on it.
Because there's a kind of superficial happiness that I could chase. Like I could chase what pleasure of life. But
that's good.
Like we mean something more. We mean
or less.
Life.
I mean something less. Yeah.
Less.
Yeah. Don't worry about it too much. These are things that Buddha didn't spend a huge amount of time talking about, like what is happiness and these kinds of things, because you know what happiness is. It's the thing that you want. Yeah. And when we do our spiritual practice, and the longer we go with our spiritual practice, the more that you understand things. Trying to figure them all out beforehand is a bit of a fool's errand, to be honest. Yeah. Just a bit of faith. Let happiness come to you. Yeah. Yena yena himanyanti tatotang hoti anyata. Right? Yes, he says. Whatever you think it is.
It's going to be, it's always something different.
Right, turns out to be something else, right? Yeah. So don't worry too much about that. Like you need, like for meditation, honestly, 90% of meditation teaching is just like making people feel like they've learned something. Because actually meditation is like really simple. Yeah. Anyway, go on. If there's any other questions. Yes.
going back to before the meditation, we were talking about stopping thinking.
Right.
Yeah. So the first practices that I did in this life were about stopping thinking.
Okay.
And then over the last maybe 30 years, there's been more teachers saying you can't stop thinking. It's about turning the volume down and, being clearer. And I know that when I stop thinking, I do quite a lot. I also stop breathing.
You also stop breathing?
I just stop.
Uh-huh.
And do you have any... I don't know. And I don't even really want to say this. Do you have any suggestions for how I can breathe while I'm not thinking?
No, that's awesome. That's a great question. Thank you for that. Can I just ask a couple of clarifying questions? Number one, you do appear to be still alive. So how's that going?
Well, because I stopped thinking for a few seconds and then the breathing comes back. I have more things. And then I stop thinking. And then I breathe. So very gentle, low-grade thoughts, but they...
Yeah. It sounds maybe like that there's like a connection with suppression, like a suppression of breathing and suppression of thoughts. Is that right? Yeah.
Thought a bit like that.
Right. So if there's like a...
Yeah, tightening.
Right. So the Buddha called this, what's the Pali phrase? Sasankhara nigaha. Something. That's the samadhi which is held forcibly in place by restraints.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah, that's you, is it? Nice. I tell you what, it's always good when there's a Pali word for what you have. Then you're like, that's me, see? Yeah, that's great. Yeah. So generally speaking, not a good idea because, well, you can either start thinking again or you can die. But okay, so remember what I was saying before about like that through metta we can create that sense of a comfortable silence. Yeah, and of course it's not just through metta, but any meditation, any method of meditation can help to create that same kind of space. So we're creating that sort of comfortable silence where you're not feeling compelled to speak or compelled to talk. Yeah. So rather than thinking in terms of stopping thinking, think in terms of like creating a space in the mind which is content and where the thoughts aren't going to where you're not going to have to need to fill that silence. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, the definitely the forcibly suppressing thing is probably not going to be a good idea. Yeah. The only time that the Buddha really suggested that or recommended that was if your mind is like in a kind of extreme circumstances, like if your mind is like really caught up in some kind of unwholesome fantasy or some kind of thing that was just like taking your mind in really bad directions, and then you can say, no, stop it. And you can actually just make yourself stop in sort of occasional circumstances. But that's generally, it's pretty rare. Yeah. You had a question?
Is it all right to, without saying may I be happy, can I use my own first language to say Sinhala?
Oh, sure. What's your first language?
Sinhala.
First language is Sinhala. Yes, of course you can. What would it be in Sinhala?
Sopatweva. Sopatweva.
Sopatweva. Okay, very nice. So please, yes, use your first language. Or whatever language you see fit, yeah. Okay, we good? Yeah.
Yeah. Somewhere along the line, I started to think of metta maybe the same way that I think about awareness. Sort of making the two of them equal. I'm not completely off track.
I'm not exactly sure what you mean about that.
I suppose so. Sitting in meditation or just being with my own being with my own thoughts, just allowing things to come up and pass away, and without judging them, and I somewhere along the line I started thinking that was kind of meta. Maybe I'm totally wrong.
Well, there's certainly an aspect what you're talking about, which has like an aspect of acceptance and kindness towards your thoughts and these kinds of things. But it's not really meta practice in that way. Yeah, it's not completely unrelated though. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we're good. Okay. So we might move on. Sorry, I've got a heat radiator at my back, which is awesome, but a little bit too much sometimes. So maybe we should continue. So what's the time now? It's 1 o'clock. All right. Okay. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about meditation, and then we can try doing a little bit more metta meditation. And then maybe do we have time? I think we have time for a tea break, and then maybe another guided meditation. So we'll try to get 2 guided meditations, and 1 to 2. Okay, let's see how we go. All right. So we did some metta meditation just now. Many of you have probably heard of the Metta Sutta. The Buddha taught the Metta Sutta. Yes, many of you, some of you not. I'm not going to go through the whole Metta Sutta now. But one of the interesting things about the Metta Sutta is that basically has 3 parts. And the first third of the Metta Sutta isn't really talking about metta at all. Actually, it's talking about essentially how to be a good person and how to live a good life. And it's talking about the foundations for meditation. So this is something which is like super important. When we look at how the Buddha taught about meditation, he didn't focus so much on like meditation methods, meditation techniques, and those kinds of things. He tended to teach those things fairly simply, in fairly broad terms, but he focused a lot on like how we live and how we actually live our lives. And I often find that in modern meditation teachings that's kind of reversed. It's just like, oh, we're going to do this technique, we're going to do this method, and no one focuses on actually what kind of person are you going to be. And these days we get the message, be all you can be, or something like that. You can be who you are, right? Live authentically. But what if you suck? Right? What if you're just a bad person? Right? It's a big problem. And you're like, I'm going to be who I truly am, and then you never know what could happen, right? You turn around, there you are, President of the United States, and you're just like, what now? So be who you can be, yes, unless you suck. In which case, be someone else, okay? Be like a different person who isn't you, yeah. And yeah. And I find like there's a lot of emphasis in Buddhism and so on like making Buddhist teachings like relevant and these kinds of things. I don't know. I often feel like it's kind of how do I say this? I often feel like the Buddha had this radical and transformative teaching that was based on this astonishing revelation of the spiritual capacity of humanity. And when we try to water down the Buddha's teachings and try to change it in something a bit more manageable, a bit less challenging, then what we're really saying is that we don't actually have that much faith in humanity. And we don't actually have that much faith in ourselves. Right? I mean, maybe we think, maybe the Buddha could do all those things or whatever, but we don't actually think that we're really capable of those transformations, right? I mean, even that thing you were saying before, like you're just like quietening the thoughts, but you're not letting go of the thoughts, right? I don't know. I feel like that's thoughts are just thoughts. It's not that hard to stop thinking. So the Buddha believed that you can transform yourself. He believed that humanity can transcend suffering. It's an astonishing teaching. But the Buddha wasn't all about, hey, look at me on my mountaintop. I'm up there doing all of this crazy stuff, and you're all these hopeless plebs down on the... That was not the Buddha's style. The Buddha's style was to try to lead us step by step so that we always have something that we can go, somewhere to improve. So no matter where we start from, it doesn't really matter, actually, as long as we are making some effort, making some steps forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Noble Eightfold Path, because that's one of the main frameworks that the Buddha used all the time for talking about how to make that kind of progress. So, first question. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? Is that all right? So first question, we're going to start out easy, okay? How many factors in the Noble Eightfold Path?
8.
8, right? Very good, excellent. That's good. You're not sure? No, okay, it's good. No, I thought you looked a bit uncertain about that. No, we're cool. We're confident. There's 8. Okay, good. Unless it's 10. Sometimes 10. That would be the tenfold path. Okay, it's 8. Okay, and what are they? In order.
Right view, right intention, action, speech, livelihood, mindfulness.
Can you just say a little bit? So, thank you. Jiva. I was going to say Hermione, but no.
Harry Potter.
Hermione always knew the answers to those things.
She was cool.
So we got right view. Let's go again.
That's intention.
Pick up.
Intention.
Right intention. Then
Speech.
right speech.
Right action.
Right action.
Livelihood.
Right livelihood.
Effort.
Right effort.
Concentration.
Mindfulness. Thank you. Maybe.
Stillness.
Maybe. Maybe not. Anyway, we'll get there.
Right immersion.
Thank you. Somebody's reading my translations. Excellent. Yes. Okay. So let's begin. Right view. All right. Right view. So I'll go through each one of these factors a little bit in detail. So right view sort of sets the framework and sets the direction of the path. And right view means a number of different things. Partly it means that one doesn't adhere to a bunch of different kinds of views that the Buddha didn't really agree with. And the basic idea here is that when we start spiritual practice, very often spiritual practices can be self-reinforcing. You start out with a particular view and then you have some kind of experience, and then that experience inevitably reinforces that view that you had. So this is that kind of thing. So a typical example, like somebody, for example, believes in God, then you believe in God, then you go away, you meditate, you do all those things, that's great. You have some profound experience in meditation, you see some lights or something like that. Hey, I saw God. That's great. So that's cool. But the problem is that those things that we believe in aren't necessarily true, right? Or they aren't necessarily really confirmed by experience, but we kind of infer that they are. So the Buddha wanted us to try to stay close as we could to experience and to what the reality that we perceive is. So when the Buddha was talking about right view, he talked about things that are pretty straightforward. Number one, of course, is suffering, right? Everybody here knows what suffering is? Yes. Anyone here never suffered? Doubtful, all right? So this is one of the first things that brings us to a spiritual path, is that we suffer. So then then the Buddha said there's an origin of suffering. Yes, there's one thing that causes suffering. It's the government. No, sorry, it's the economy. No, it's our boss. No, it's our family. No, it's our neighbors. No, it's our craving. Yes, attachments. So the Buddha wasn't trying to, just to sort of forestall some misunderstandings, the Buddha wasn't trying to say that external forces of suffering are not real and not important. Obviously they are, right? All he was saying was that there's also an inner form of suffering, and this is what makes us actually suffer, because of all of those other external forces. So craving, okay, final, and then there's an ending to craving, right? So it's possible to not crave things. So this is that bit where I was talking about with the human potential, right? The Buddha really, really believed and realized for himself and taught and practiced this his whole life. It's possible to not have cravings and attachments. And it's something that should strike us with a sense of wonder. When you hear that, you should be like, how do you brush your teeth in the morning? Like, you've got to want to brush your teeth. Surely that's a craving. And why would you do that? And all of these things, like, how do you actually live your life if you don't have any cravings and attachments? It's really challenging, but it should be. It should be kind of disturbing also. Like, the goal of the spiritual path should be a bit disturbing, because it should be a bit fearful. Like, will I still be me? If I realize that, would that be me? Right? Aren't I defined by my likes and dislikes? Isn't that who I am? What would I become if I were to let go of all of those things? And these should be fundamental and disturbing questions. Yeah. So if you find yourself kind of freaked out by it, then that's good. That means you're actually facing them. And then the Buddha said there is a path, the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the way to realize the ending of suffering. Now, that Noble Eightfold Path, of course, path, right, is just a metaphor. There's no actual path. It's just a metaphor path. So it seems nice and neat and linear. It's not really, but it's a way of helping us to understand how these things go, and to be able to internalize the idea that there is a sense of progress and a sense of practice, i.e. that it's something that we do. So this is the Four Noble Truths, which is one of the main parts of the definition of what suffering is. What right view is. Okay, so the next one is right intention. So right intention is defined in terms of intention of contentment and renunciation, letting go, intention of love, and intention of compassion, as opposed to greed, holding on, hatred, and cruelty. So this step in the path is an essential complement to right view. This is like really, really, really important. Even though like right view tends to get all of the attention, right? There's lots of books written about right view, very few books written about right motivation. But right motivation is what means that you undertake that path in the right spirit. There are lots of people who take up Buddha's teachings and who look at dependent origination and not self, and they look at the Abhidhamma, or they look at the Mahayana philosophy, and you can debate about emptiness, and but they've got no feel for it. It becomes the Buddha's teachings can become almost like an excuse for nihilism. You can believe, everything is just dukkha, everything is just suffering, and it can be kind of reductive and almost justify your own sense of like, nothing's worthwhile and all of that stuff. And in fact, I think this is not uncommon. So we have to make sure that we come from that place of that right intention, that right motivation, and to try to remember that each of these factors is not just something that you have or you don't have, but it's something that you try to fulfill with abundance and with perfection. So we should, in our practice, strive to be overflowing with love and with compassion, to fulfill these and to keep on growing them. It's not like you just sort of get it and don't get it, but it's something that we can always keep growing with through our whole life. Okay, right speech. Right speech is super important. So right speech means not lying, but also means speech that is kind, and speech that is harmonious, and speech that is meaningful, right? It's incredibly important. And I think it's particularly important in our day and age where we have literally industrialized quantities of wrong speech spreading through the internet especially, but through human culture and human minds on a scale that is just unprecedented. I mean, it's just shocking, actually, how we have let these technologies take control of us and just do what they want. And we have created a world where just absolute, it's not just that these things just happen to be, right? No. It's that the richest and most powerful men in the world build parks and industrial complexes with massive warehouses filled with thousands and thousands and thousands of the world's most powerful computers chugging the energy of an entire city in order to create this crap that is just being spewed around the world. That's how that happens. It doesn't just happen by accident. It is manufactured at a massive multi-hundreds of billions of dollars industrial scale by the richest men in the world for their purposes, just so we're clear, not for your purposes. Yeah. So I'm talking about AI, I'm talking about social media, I'm talking about the way that these things are used and industrialized and weaponized. And our speech, our capacity for human speech is being taken from us. I can't emphasize how important this is. Right? When we're talking to people, we have decided as humanity to shift most of our conversations online. I mean, here we are in a room together, but that's kind of rare these days. Most of the time, most people communicate online, right? And most of the time, if our communications are with other people, it's maybe fairly limited, just a few people that we know or in a professional environment or something. But most of the time, people are communicating online, and you don't actually know if it's a human or not, right? That's the reality. All of these social media, everything is filled with actual robots who you don't know if they're human. And so we are constantly, what that means is that every time that some AI or some bot puts something there, it's dehumanizing all of us. These technologies are dehumanizing technologies. That's their goal. Their goal is to devalue humanity, to strip us of meaning and to replace human meaning with machine unmeaning. And I think it's incredibly important that we reclaim that and reclaim our humanity. And I really encourage everybody to try to think about this and contemplate it and to really try to live lives that restore meaning in you and in your communications, in your friendships, in the way that you relate to people, to try to restore meaning and to restore humanity as much as possible. When there is so much hate, so much horrifying like abuse and threats and all of these kinds of things, so much wrong speech being produced by people from the highest levels of government, from people, the richest people in the world, all of this kind of stuff, then it becomes even more urgent for each one of us to speak honestly and to speak truly and to speak with meaning and to speak humanly. Yeah? So don't let them just take this away from you. You still have the chance to speak. So do it. Find your voice. It's part of the Noble Eightfold Path. In Buddhism, very often we like to keep silent. Yeah? And we were talking about that earlier. Right? People come to a meditation group or something like that, and you want to be silent because there's so much noise around. And you're like, oh, it's nice to be silent for a little while. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. So when I teach a retreat, this is one of the little tricks that I play on people. I just ask people, do you want to keep silence for the retreat? And they always say yes. And then I said, do you want to hear what the Buddha said about taking a vow of silence? They say, sure. And then I tell them this story. You know the story from the Purana? Yeah. So anyway, long story short, so these monks were practicing on retreat, and they spent 3 months practicing, or there was 3 months with the Vas, and they decided to keep a vow of silence for the retreat. Afterwards, they came to see the Buddha. So usually the practice was after the 3 months, we do a 3 months rains retreat every year, and after that, in the Buddha's day, that the Sangha would leave where they were going, they'd go to Savatthi, where the Buddha usually lived, and they would report about their meditation and get some advice. So they went to see the Buddha, and he said, how are you practicing? Did you have a good retreat? They said, yeah, this is good. And then they said, and we kept a vow of silence. And the Buddha said, how can you foolish men live together like pigs? How can you foolish men live together like sheep? How can you foolish men live together like cattle? It is not to be done. It is a practice of other religions. I forbid it. You are not allowed to keep a vow of silence. Right? Can you imagine? Oh my God. Can you imagine going to see the Buddha? And then you're like, oh, I feel so good. I did this nice retreat and everything like that. And then he goes at you like this. Oh no, I'm sorry, Buddha. And it's very rare, just in case you're getting the wrong impression, it's very rare that the Buddha would be so strong. Like normally, like if you tried to murder him or something, he might have some strong words for you, all right? But if you're just going off and doing a retreat, no, this is very unusual. It's striking to something that is at the heart of the Buddha's own conception for what a spiritual community is, or what a Sangha is, yeah? And so the reason being that we have to talk to each other, we have to understand each other, we have to listen, we have to be able to say when you've done something wrong, and you have to be able to correct yourself, and you have to be able to share your wisdom and your understanding. And these things are part of the Noble Eightfold Path, not something that you can just neglect. In certain instances, to be silent is wrong speech. And this is like formally stated. In fact, every fortnight, for the when we live together as a community of monks or nuns, and we recite our rules for our order. So for the bhikkhus, for the monks, and we have 227 rules, and we recite those. And the idea is that if you've broken any of those rules, you have to confess them. And at the beginning of it, it says that if you've broken any of these rules and you've not confessed them, and then you're remaining silent, then this is a lie. This is false speech. So being silent can be false speech, yeah? And I think this is a really important thing to bear in mind. We live in a world where silence can be a kind of wrong speech, when we need to speak up, and we need to stand in defense of all those people who are having their rights taken away from them, all of those people who are vulnerable, all of those people who are being just dehumanized and depersonalized. And this is happening all over the world. Obviously, it's happening especially in America right now, and what's happening is shocking, absolutely shocking and devastating. But equally so, it's not limited to the United States. It's something that is a reality of life for people everywhere. So I think it's really important as Buddhists or as spiritual people, as spiritual practitioners, that we can stand up. It doesn't mean that we have to be, activists or whatever, but just to have the guts to be able to speak and say what's true and say what's meaningful, and not just be silent in the face of everything. I think it's really, really important. Okay, so that's right speech, right action. Okay, so right action is mostly 3 precepts. Usually explained as 3 precepts. What are those 3 precepts, by the way? Not killing, not stealing. Kame michachara, which is? You don't want to say it to a monk, do you?
Oh, no.
Sexual misconduct. Okay, very good. I have to say, like as a monk, because I have to explain this precept, right? It's never not awkward, I'm just going to say. Anyway, moving on. So not killing, all right? See, not killing is a weird one, because most of us don't kill all that much, right?
A lot of people kill insects and small animals that they don't feel that their lives are as valuable. They're already thinking about it.
Okay. So maybe kill some cockroaches, something like that. Okay. But that's about it usually, right? We're not killing anything else. Obviously exceptions for our undead friends. So we're not usually killing things, you know. And when we did this retreat in Norway, and then we was kind of talking about this because in Norway they love their murder mysteries, right? So we came up with the idea that we have like a novel called Murder on the Retreat. And like every time you come in for a meditation session, there's one less person. And you have to kind of figure it out, and then finally you get the culprit and you figure it out, and you say, why did you do it? You say, but they were breathing so loud. I couldn't help myself. It was just too annoying. I couldn't stand it one more. Anyway, so by the way, anybody wants to take that idea, write a novel, then let's just have it. That's fine. Yeah. Where were we? Yes, killing. Right. But somehow, even though most of us actually don't go around killing all that much, but we as a species kill like a lot, like a whole bloody planet we're killing. Yeah. What's the figures? 62% of mammalian life on planet Earth is human beings. 30-something% is livestock. And 4% is everything else. All the other mammals on the earth is 4%. All of the koalas and the dolphins and the possums and the reindeer, 4%. Yeah, that's how much killing we've done. All of the factory farms that we have, yeah. Not just factory farms anymore, but whole multi-story flats full of pigs raised for the slaughter, chickens raised for the slaughter, massive trawlers just hoovering up the oceans and massacring the fish, massacring all the wildlife, smashing down whole forests. In Australia, the deforestation in Australia, they've cut down more trees than would cover the entirety of Spain, France, and Germany combined. That's the deforestation in Australia, and they're still going at a massive rate. That's how much killing we do, but we don't do it, so we're good, right? That means that we're morally absolved from killing. But somehow it keeps happening. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? It's a bit hard to escape the realities of what we are and how we live. And I think that we like to believe that we can live a good life while not being responsible for the things that we are so obviously responsible for. When the Buddha taught this particular precept, he didn't just say, don't squash cockroaches and don't go fishing. I mean, these things are good. But he also said that you live with a heart full of compassion for all sentient beings. Yeah? Yeah? We live with a heart full of compassion for all sentient beings. How much of that do we actually do, really? Yeah. So when I was and I live in Australia, I live near the Blue Mountains, and near the Blue Mountains is in the Blue Mountains there's an origin story, an Aboriginal origin myth for the Blue Mountains, the story of the hunter Murrigan. And Murrigan was chasing the rainbow serpent, like a big naga. And he really, really, really wanted to kill this rainbow serpent. And he's chasing the rainbow serpent all around, and the rainbow serpent dives into the earth, and that's what created this particular valley. And then he heaped up some ground, and then that's what created this mountain. And then he burrowed through, and that's what created these caves. And so every feature on the landscape was created by this mad chase of Murugan chasing the rainbow serpent. The only person who was the voice of reason in the whole mad enterprise was his wife. And his wife says, "Come on, darling, time for dinner." You don't have to keep chasing the rainbow serpent. But he wouldn't listen. And he kept on chasing. And so much chaos and madness and devastation was created. Until eventually he was chased, the rainbow serpent was chased down to the bottom of the deepest hole and the deepest well, right at the bottom of the well. And there the hunter couldn't reach them. So eventually, at the matter of after a long series of adventures and misadventures, the hunter managed to cut off one chunk of the rainbow serpent's flesh. Didn't kill him, but cut off a piece of the flesh. Yeah? And then they could eat that piece of the flesh. That was enough. Yeah? That was enough. And so that was the lesson that the Aboriginal people learned in living in that landscape, yeah? That our land is alive, yeah? The rainbow serpent is the life of the land, and our land is alive, and we can take something, we can take enough to nourish ourselves, but we don't take everything, we just take a little bit. And if we just take a little bit, we can live because the earth is so abundant, and the earth is incredible. I don't know if you've ever noticed this recently, but the earth is just unbelievable. Like you can just breathe in and there's oxygen and stuff. It's amazing, yeah? We don't appreciate it, but try going literally anywhere else in the universe and breathing in. It's not a great experience, I can promise you that, yeah? And if you go down there, just a few meters, it's just rock. That's it. There's nothing there. And if you go up there, a few kilometers, it's just space. And then it just keeps being space. And you know how long the space goes on? A long time. All right? And it's trying really, 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 really hard to kill you all the time. Yeah. It is. It's it just really wants you dead. Yeah.
Doesn't have the second factor of the path.
Sorry?
Doesn't have right intention.
It does not. Space that does not have right intention, yeah. And so all we have is this little bit. We've got a bit of slime and dirt and twigs and stuff on the surface of this sphere, and that's it. That's literally all there is in the entire universe. Forever. And it's so incredibly abundant. You can get water that you can drink. It comes just out of the ground. It's nuts. And there's trees, okay? You won't believe this, but they actually grow stuff that you can eat on them. It's incredible. How is it that we can live in a place that's so amazing and so full of life and full of beauty and full of wonder everywhere? And all we can think is knocking it down and killing it and murdering everything and putting up concrete and crap. The earth is incredible. And if we are to be at all kind of meaningful in our lives and in what we're doing, then we live in a way that gives life and gives abundance to the earth. And to me, it's kind of wild how even in environmental spheres and people working on climate change and these kinds of things, then all we can conceive of is ways of murdering the earth a little bit more slowly. That's it. And there's no kind of conception that maybe actually if we were good tenants of the earth, we would leave the earth more abundant than we found it. It's not as if this is impossible. That's what Aborigines did in Australia. When white people arrived in Australia, they come to somewhere like Sydney, in the region around Sydney, and it was just this beautiful garden where there was so many fruit trees and so much things growing that people could live on. because the Aboriginal people were cultivating it for thousands and thousands of years. And you weren't like making farms and these kinds of things, but you would like be, this is where you'd throw the seeds and this is where you'd do this and that. And over long periods of time, you had this beautiful park-like environment that could support quite a large population. And just that the abundance of it. So it's doable, but we just don't want to because it's inconvenient, because it doesn't make money for the right people. So our precept for not killing, to me, is probably the most profound and most challenging calling of the spiritual life. Actually, to live a precept of not killing is much harder than meditating. Yeah, actually much harder. And so like a lot of things I see in Buddhism that people seem to think, you can just gloss over the precepts and you can go on, you can do this and you can do that. And they don't even consider what are the ramifications and the meaning of the life that we're leading. So this is not about being like Puritan, or it's not about like thinking that you're going to be, holier than thou or anything like that. But it's about meaningfully considering how we are going to live in a way that creates abundance with the life which we are blessed with in this planet. Okay, so the next precept is precept against not stealing. Okay? So any thieves here? No one been doing any bank robbery? No? Maybe a couple of dodgy downloads here and there? Okay. So theft, right? Well, we could go on for quite some time about theft. So in again, while I'm on the theme, I guess when we did a retreat out in Central Australia a few years ago, and so we took a bunch of the Buddhists out there, and it was great. We were sleeping on swags on the desert. So the swag is just like a what's the swag? Like a bedroll? Thank you, a bedroll. Excellent. Like Waltzing Matilda, right? Once a jolly swagman, right? That's what a swag is. That's the swag for the swag. Anyway, so you put the swag down and you sleep there, and we do some meditation and so on. It was really interesting. Like one of the things that I noticed, like being in the desert for a few days like that, is that dirt isn't dirty. Have you ever noticed that? Like we make dirt into something dirty because we create buildings and we say, ew, dirt. But actually dirt itself is actually quite beautiful when it's not mixed up with all of the crap and the pollution and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so we were out there practicing, and they told us about some of the stories on the land, right? And one of the story was about, I think it was a quoll. And so the quoll had stolen some food from a nearby camp and was running away, trying to escape with the food. And then the guy who was telling us the story was like pointing to the landscape when he was telling it, like this is where the quoll came along here, and this is where he went there, and this is where they chased him, and so on. And so these stories are not just abstract parables or fables. It's literally the land that you live in. And it's not just one of the things that I learned there, it's not just the land that you live in, it's also in the stars. So these things also have constellations, so that you literally kind of orientating your life by the stars, which are the meaning of that story, which is found in the landscape. So you're surrounded. So a story isn't something that you just like pick up in a book and you can close it and you can put away. A story is something that you live in, and which gives value and meaning to the life in which you are living. And then there's a rock there, which is like juts out at this odd angle from the cliff. And that rock is where Quoll turned back and felt remorse. Yeah? And that's frozen in time. So this, to me, that was really interesting, right? Because psychologically, you're telling the story where that's the crucial juncture where you have to decide, am I going to continue to be a thief, or am I going to do the right thing? And that human emotion of that remorse comes, and recognition, actually other people need to eat this food, or you can't just steal it. And that moment of that psychological transformation is frozen there because it's so important. Yeah. And then the quoll was scared and given this warning by the rainbow serpent, who rose up above Uluru, and this is all we're now on a cliff, and there's a big cliff, and there's huge black marks all along the cliff, and that's where the rainbow serpent blasted the cliff with his laser eyes, and that made all these black marks across it. So later on, I put down this story in a book. I submitted a chapter for a book, and I put this bit in, and the editors were like, "You can't say that. It just doesn't sound realistic at all." I'm saying I was literally in the desert with an Aboriginal who said that the woggle serpent blasted it with his laser eyes. So you can you can tell me that's not authentic if you like, but that's what happened. Okay, and so this points to that how crucial that precept about not stealing is, right? Because again, not stealing, we think of it in terms of, you're going to take what somebody, but this whole land has been given to us. This whole planet, right, is somehow we're here. Who says we own it? Like, who says this is ours to just take and to steal and to have and to use? Actually, this is a blessing for us to be able to be here and to be able to be a part of such an incredible place. So we on that camp, we stayed a couple of kilometers away from where those cliffs are, and at the bottom base of those cliffs is a waterhole, a beautiful waterhole with this fresh, clear drinking water, deep and big in the middle of the desert. I mean, it's amazing. Huh? And so one of the things that they told us is that he says that their people would never live near the waterhole. Absolutely. You would never do that. First thing the white people come and do, I mean, it literally is in the song, once a jolly swagman camped by the billabong, right? Billabong, just to translate for non-Australians, is a waterhole. So that's what you do. You literally come and you camp by the waterhole. So that means who isn't coming by the waterhole? Well, kangaroo isn't coming by the waterhole, and wallaby isn't coming by, and snake isn't coming by, and goanna isn't coming by, and just you're there. And so the Aboriginals would always camp away because the animals need to come and drink, and they shouldn't feel afraid to come and drink and get what they need. Yeah, and so this is the attitude of caring, and I think to me it's really kind of stunning how far we have fallen from this attitude. This is not anything extraordinary. It's just normal. It's just like being a normal, decent entity on this planet is to look after each other in this way. And we did this. Humanity has lived like this for thousands of years, all across the world in different ways. Right? And we become so used to being able to get what we want, to have what we want, to consume what we want. We built all of these machines that can supply our desires. And yet the more and more we fill our desires, the more and more empty we feel inside. And we create things that we want by smashing the world into pieces, grinding it into paste, and reconstituting it into a second-hand, watered-down copy or relic of something that once was meaningful. So to live a life that is not stealing is a huge challenge. And it calls us to live a life of contentment. It calls us to question what it is that we really want and why we want it. Yeah. So the third, sorry, how long are we going on now? Okay. Third precept is sexual misconduct. Okay. So yeah, like I said, never not awkward. Be a monastic, talking with a bunch of people about sexual misconduct. But anyway, here we go. Do you want to take this one? No. So in Buddhism, basically sexual misconduct means not not hurting anybody who you're in a relationship with. That's the basic idea. So when we're in a relationship with somebody, especially an intimate or romantic or sexual relationship, it's very vulnerable and very emotionally vulnerable. And so because of that, it's very easy to create a lot of suffering and dukkha by betraying people. And so any kind of sex that is non-consensual or which is with somebody who's underage and those kinds of things, which you'd normally think is prescribed in Buddhism, but what Buddhism does not prescribe is same-sex relationships. Okay, so these are not ever considered to be an issue in Buddhism, certainly not in early Buddhism. And it's not about who you sleep with. It's not about even how many people you sleep with. Okay, you can sleep with as many people as you like. The Buddha wasn't necessarily saying this is a great idea. Okay, he wasn't saying, but he wasn't also being he wasn't really very kind of judgmental about what kind of relationships that you can be in. A number of years ago in Sydney, I was part of a delegate. They had a Senate inquiry into marriage equality, and I was attended as part of the Buddhist delegation for that. And so we supported marriage equality, as did the Hindus, as did the progressive Jews, and a couple of other groups. But in Sydney, the mainstream Catholic and Anglican churches in Sydney are extremely conservative, like much more conservative than mainstream Catholics and Anglicans in the rest of the world. So much so that the mainstream Anglican church is actually a separate communion to the rest of Anglicanism because they refuse to accept the ordination of women. And so it's actually like they're both of them, for whatever reasons, extremely conservative. But that, of course, is just the leadership. That doesn't actually reflect the people. But yeah, that's what the bishops are like. Anyway, so we come along for this meeting, and then the bishops are like, well, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. They didn't actually, that's not a quote, okay? That's the gist of it. But what was kind of interesting there was to see the kind of the dynamic, because the Jewish guy there, I'm not sure if he's a rabbi or not, can't remember now. But you can see he's kind of a bit annoyed at the way that Christians tend to sort of co-opt the Old Testament when it suits them and then dismiss it when it doesn't, when it's actually the Hebrew Scriptures, which is their Bible. Yeah, so you can see there was a little bit of tension in the air about how to handle the Scriptures. But he then pointed out that actually Adam and Eve weren't actually married. Right? So that's kind of inconvenient. So, we can take scriptures and we can take religious ideas and ideologies and so on, and we can use them in a way that's going to exclude and marginalize and harm, if we want to, yeah? That tells us a little bit about the ancient scriptures and a lot about the people who are using them in that way, yeah? So, preferably, we don't do that. Preferably, we handle our religious traditions and our religious histories in ways that are compassionate and that bring people together and that lead to help them to overcome love and overcome suffering. And no matter what background we have, if we come from a Christian background, a Muslim background, a Hindu, or whatever, or if we have no religion or spiritual background at all, it doesn't really matter too much. We can always find wisdom wherever we turn. Actually, there is wisdom everywhere. And even like if you look at how the Buddha taught, the Buddha wasn't teaching by citing his own scriptures, right? He was teaching by looking at nature, by looking at the sun and the stars, by looking at the trees, by looking at how people behaved. And he was drawing wisdom from the things that he could see around him every day. And we can find that wisdom within ourselves. So if we're using our religion as an excuse to be obsessed about other people's genitals and what they are doing with them, it's kind of a bit weird. And when I hear people saying these kinds of things, I'm always so embarrassed for them. I'm like, dude, too much information. I don't need to know that about you, you know? It's kind of embarrassing. It's like, it's okay. Like, whatever you want to do, it's like, I don't really care, you know? But just like, don't hurt each other, right? Just be nice to each other. To me, it's such a degradation of spirituality and spiritual potential to drag religion down into this kind of nasty, mean, just stuff, name calling and stuff. Spiritual path should be expanding our humanity, and it should be but should be practicing love and compassion and acceptance. So anyway, these are the three main precepts: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And then that brings us up to right livelihood. Okay. So let me just ask a couple of questions here. So right livelihood basically is about what job you have. Is it okay if I ask do a bit of an impromptu survey? Is that okay? Okay, how many people have a job in terms of like something that they do to earn money? Okay. So most people have a job. Some people may be retired. Some people may be students. Some people like us, like just skiving off on the generosity of others. What? Right. So how we have our life and make our life is called our livelihood in Buddhism. And so so there's certain kinds of things that are considered to be wrong livelihood. Okay, wrong livelihood includes trading, like slavery, trading in live animals, trading in weapons, trading in poisons, trading in drugs, I think. Yeah. Anyway, that kind of thing. So those are things which are considered to be wrong livelihood. Then there are other things which are considered to be right livelihood. So one of the livelihoods that the Buddha always praised the most was anyone who's in the caring professions. So if you're a nurse, a doctor, a therapist, anything like that where you're looking after people, then the Buddha thought that was a wonderful kind of livelihood. But generally speaking, any kind of livelihood where you're actually doing something to help people is right livelihood. So if you're a plumber, right livelihood, because people need to flush their toilets. Okay, if you're a cook, right livelihood. If you're a bricklayer, right livelihood. Yeah, so just ordinary everyday jobs. Being a farmer is incredible right livelihood. You know, and whenever I talk with people, I always try to reframe their job or whatever like that. It's like if somebody's a bus driver, I say, you help people get to where they need to go. Actually, being a bus driver is incredibly good livelihood. All of those people need to get home. Well, they need to get somewhere, and you're helping them to get somewhere. Yeah, it's actually a really good livelihood. Or like a bricklayer. You say, are you a bricklayer? Oh, yeah, you're somebody who creates homes for families to grow up in. Amazing kind of livelihood that is. And so one of the problems is that we become distanced from the consequences and the meaning of the work that we do. And we can't become accustomed to thinking of it as just a job, that we forget that it's actually like we spend 8 hours a day doing that and maybe 20 minutes a day meditating, if we're lucky, maybe an hour, right? And somehow 8 hours a day, that's nothing. And so we have this attitude about our work that somehow we do our meditation so we can de-stress after getting stressed at work, right? So we do our livelihood and then we sort of cure that by doing some meditation so we can kind of get back into a balance. No. Right livelihood is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, and it's one of the things that makes it possible for you to meditate. So we shouldn't be thinking of our livelihood as something that's an obstruction to meditation. It's an essential support for meditation. And we can shift our own perception to provide the conditions for making that happen. We can reflect. When we go for work in the morning, you leave the house. I don't know, does anyone still leave the house to go to work? Not really. Not in this weather. And when you start work, then you just give yourself a moment to just stop and think, hang on, now I'm going to leave my non-work behind. I'm going to start doing my work, and I'm going to practice right livelihood. I'm blessed with the opportunity to practice right livelihood of the Noble Eightfold Path. And if you're not actually working, right, if you're retired or whatever, or if you're on welfare or something like that, then whatever it is that you're doing that day, try to do the same thing. Try to reflect, oh, now I get the chance to do this thing which is actually worthwhile. And then when you finish the day, then the same thing. You reflect, oh, now this is finished, my work is finished, my day is over. Draw a line, right? It's even more important if you're working from home, right? To be able to just draw a line and say, now my period of work is over. Sadhu, I had the opportunity to practice right livelihood. Now I can come and do my meditation or whatever else it is that you're doing. These things should be supporting each other. So one of the big tricks, one of the big cons that modern life has played on us is by reducing work to being something which is meaningless and devalued. Work traditionally is hard, right? But it's not meaningless. When I lived in when I was a young monk, I lived in northeast Thailand, and we lived in a small village, all rice around us, sticky rice they grow, and you could see that the harvest was such an integral part of the rhythms of people's lives. Certain parts of the year they'd be working really hard, back-breaking, hard labor. Other parts of the year, taking it easy, relaxing. Yeah, you have to follow those seasons. But when they would do the harvest and they would make the first rice of the season, they would bring that into the temple and they'd offer that to the Sangha, and the whole village would come, and it would be such a happy time, and it would be so amazing. And I tell you what, that rice was the most delicious rice you would ever eat. Yeah, the first rice of the season. It's incredible. Yeah, and so that's something meaningful. You can see all that work that you've done is now feeding yourself, feeding the Sangha, feeding your family, feeding your community, and supporting everybody like that. This is meaningful right livelihood. And so our modern economy has stripped meaning out of our jobs and told us that we're only doing it because we're getting a paycheck. We're only doing it because we've got our bills to pay. We're only doing it because we have to. And so that's really hard. And that's something that it's really important to try to fight against, try to reclaim some meaning. Now, for some people have managed to do that. Some people have got good jobs and meaningful jobs, and then have to remember that. But for others, it's difficult. And I know I don't think it's easy to just be able to do that, because I think that the way that the economy works is to constantly undermine your sense of meaning. And I think this is going to get worse. I think with things like AI, for example, it's going to get even much worse, because not only are they going to be saying we're going to replace you with an AI, we're saying that you were never worth anything to us as a human being. And the moment that we could get rid of you and replace you with a machine, the better. Yeah. And, for many of us, AI is going to be coming for our jobs, yeah, and already is, yeah. So, when we are living, when we are making our livelihood, then it's up to us to try to invest that livelihood with as much meaning as we possibly can. Right? This is our practice of right livelihood. So far I've talked about, remind me what we've talked about again so far? Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Excellent. Thank you so much. My memory's going, so I need this kind of thing. But now, in a minute, we're going to do some meditation, okay? But first of all, I just want you to ask yourself, how many of these factors have you fulfilled? Right? At least to some degree. Right? Well, for a start, you've all come here to listen to some Dhamma today, so that means you're putting effort into your right view. Right? Congratulations. Okay. Yay, everyone. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right view. Excellent. Number one. Okay. So then what about your right intention? Has anybody like today been like, for example, plotting revenge against their nemesis? No? But I think you've come here and you've been kind to each other. Is that right? And I think that we've been right, mostly. So I think that's kind of right intention. I think we've got our right intention. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. Right intention. Yay, everybody. Awesome. Right intention. Okay. What about right speech? So I'm mostly the one speaking here, so you can be a judge about that. But apart from that, have you been lying today to anyone? No? You've been yelling at them? Belittling? Demeaning? Looks like we got our right speech. Excellent. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Congratulations, everyone. Right action. Okay. No casual murder on the way to the meditation center? No? Anything like that? How are we doing? Right. Just having to clarify that one. Are we good?
Did you murder anyone on the way?
No.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Excellent. No. I mean, I didn't think that you had, okay, but it's nice to be reassured, right? Yeah. So everyone, yay, right action. Very good. Excellent. And what about right livelihood? So we're taking a day off, so that's pretty good already. So, and but anybody doing any of those bad, wrong livelihoods? No?
I feel like I'm not 100% where I should be.
Okay.
In my livelihood, I think the work that I am doing is I can see how it can bring benefit to people.
Okay.
There can also be, downsides to it.
Okay. Is it okay to ask what kind of work that is? In tech. Okay.
So it's not a full-time job, so I rely on benefits to some extent. So that's why I feel
right. Yeah, so a lot of those jobs, they're kind of iffy, aren't they? And we kind of feel, it can be good or it can be bad. And there's a lot of industries that are like that. So one time when I was in Malaysia a few years ago, I was driving along with someone and we're just kind of chatting and so on. And, just asked him about his job. And he said that he worked in advertising. And he said, and he just sort of asked me, do you think that's right livelihood? And I'm like, it's not great as such. He said, well, you want to know exactly what I do? I said, sure. He says, well, he works on public information for the health department. So letting people know what the health department's doing. I said, okay, well, that's all right then. So it really does depend, doesn't it? Yeah. And within that tech world, it's hard.
It's a lot of ambiguity.
A lot of ambiguity, and a lot of that they kind of leverage. And you see actually a lot of people who work in the tech industry actually, are quite idealistic, and they really believe in creating things that are going to help people, in sharing information and all of these things. And then you find that little bit by little bit, all that kind of goes away. Yeah. Like it's interesting if you look at, I think one of the early papers from Sergey Brin and what's his name? Larry, the other guy? Sorry, Page. Is it a Page? Anyway, the two Google guys, whatever. And they did one of the early papers they did on the theory of search engines in about 98 or 97, 98 or something like that. And one of the things that they argued quite strongly was that search engines should not be dependent on advertising. Yeah, because then that would corrupt the flow of the information. Yeah, good argument. Yeah. So little bit by little bit, it's very easy to lose sight of what you're doing. But at the same time, our world is mediated by technology, like it or not. And so we need good people who can try to be a voice for morality and a voice for doing what's right to actually stand up. Yeah. And sometimes it takes time to figure that out, like how you can do that. So, it's okay to take some time. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned care specifically as being
right.
one thing that the Buddha encouraged people
right.
to
right.
as life as right livelihood, because that's actually the path that I've been hoping to take from here and
right.
do away with tech, but that also has its own challenges. So, but it's just encouraging to hear.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best. Yeah. Okay, so right livelihood, we're a little bit dodgy on that. But we mostly got right. Let's have a round of applause for all those who do have right livelihood. Okay, excellent. That's great. Okay, so so far most of us are kind of 4.5 or 5 out of 5. Right, that's 5 factors of the Eightfold Path. Right, and we're kind of 4.5 to 5 for most people. That's pretty good. That's 5 out of 8. We haven't even started meditating yet, right? It's really important to keep reminding yourself about this, because so many times when people say, "How is your practice going?" or something like that, they just think that, it's just the time that you're spending on the meditation mat. You're actually practicing the Eightfold Path every day, or you can be, but you need to remind yourself of this and keep reflecting on it and say, "Oh yeah, this is how I'm practicing the Eightfold Path." Keep it alive in your mind. Keep it vital in your consciousness, that all of these things about how you're living your life is part of the path of the Dhamma, part of the path away from suffering and towards freedom. And that's why we're doing these things. So it's not just about doing the meditation, but all of these things are part of what's supporting us and supporting our meditation practice. Not just supporting it in the sense of being something that's a bit of an assistance to it, but supporting it as in being the foundation that makes meditation possible. So never underestimate your own goodness and the power of your own practice. Okay? So let's do some more guided meditation. And for this, we're going to do guided meditation for oneself and for a loved person. And I'm just going to say a few words before we begin on doing metta for the loved person. All right? Now, I already mentioned how we should not do metta for not do metta for somebody who we have a twisted, messed up relationship with, okay? This is not a place for resolving your relationship problems, all right? That's you go to find a therapist or something like that and you can talk to them about that. This is a place for getting in touch with that pure, childish feeling of metta, all right? So often, the loved one that you want to do metta for is not the one you necessarily love the most, but the someone you love the simplest. The simplest love for. Sometimes it might be like your grandparents, maybe, or like a niece or nephew, or a friend, or someone like that. Somebody who makes you happy to be with. And I'm just going to preemptively make a couple of caveats here. Okay. Number one is it's a good idea to avoid doing metta for anyone who you might feel sexually attracted to. Okay? Why? Because you're going to get horny and your meditation, it's not going to be good for your meditation, okay? So you can do that later, okay? Number two, don't do your metta meditation in the meditation for somebody who's dead. Okay? Right? Why? Because, normally when someone's died, we're like, we love you so much, don't leave us, never leave us, and then they die, and then we're like, never come back. And if they come back and visit us again, then we're like, no, please go away. So we don't want that to happen in the meditation, okay? So if you're doing metta for dear old Gran in your meditation and then she comes and visits you, it's not conducive to peace of mind, okay? Especially if you're doing like in group meditation, because might mess up everyone's meditation. But also, like when you do that metta, then it can bring feelings of grief and loss, of course. So just try to do metta for somebody who you love simply, not necessarily the most. Right? So one time there was a dad on this retreat I was on, and he was like, I can't, like, which one of my children do I do metta for? and like, it's a hard problem, right? I've got a son and a daughter. Which one do I do metta for? It's like, okay, just can take turns, all right? All right, but do one of them in one meditation and then another one in another meditation. That's all right. Yeah, it's not about like. It's not meant to be a kind of a judgment on whether you're loving the right people in the right amount or anything like that. It's just responding to what your feelings are. Ultimately, through doing this practice, you'll love everyone, and you'll love everyone equally. It's not going to be a problem. But we have to start with where we are, and that's just the reality. So you can do metta for different people, but not in the same meditation, okay? Different meditations, okay? So other important rules for this, for love. Oh, by the way, yeah, like no pets.
Oh.
Why not?
Why not? Because I'm just a mean, nasty old mum. I don't know. No, expect me to have the answers for all these questions. I think like one of the purposes of metta meditation, and particularly this particular method that we're learning, is that like when you go to each different stage of the meditation, you change one thing. Think of it like a scientific experiment. Yeah, you want to change one parameter, and so you want to see what that difference is. So when you start to change a lot of different parameters at the same time, you're never quite sure exactly what's going on. All right. So one human person. All right. And then people ask me these things, okay? They say, can I do this? Can I do that? Look, you can do whatever you want. I'm not your mind police, okay? Do what you like. All I'm saying is this is the practice that I've been taught. So if you want to know how to do it, this is how we do it. Do you get people ask you that all a lot? Can I do this? Can I do that? Yeah. Yeah, you can do it. Is it a good idea to do that? Well, it's another question. All right, so metta for those things. Oh, and also for this metta for the loved one, we're keeping that metta inside our body. All right, so we're not going out over there to where that person is. Okay, so, and people often ask, if I do metta for Aunt Sally, is Aunt Sally going to feel it? Okay, now as Buddhist practitioners, we should take an attitude of inquiry. Okay, so you do the meditation, may Aunt Sally be happy, may Aunt Sally be happy. And when meditation's over, you give her a call. Hey Aunt Sally, how's it going? Good, yeah, it's nice. I don't feel anything special recently. Oh yes, why not? Right? Who knows? You might learn something, yeah? So, that's right, and not more than one in one session. That's right, because then you're doing like, may Aunt Sally be happy, may Aunt Mildred be happy, good. May Aunt Frances. I don't know about Aunt Frances. Okay, we'll just stick with Aunt Mildred. Okay, and then it can get a little bit complicated. So just one person per session, different people in different sessions. Anything I haven't covered? Any questions before we start? Yeah.
What does keeping it within the body mean?
Means from the beginning we're focusing on mindfulness inside the body, right? And then we're developing the feeling of metta inside the body as well. When we were just practicing now, were you able to do that? Did you feel the feeling of body? Yeah. A reason I'm asking is because most people can feel like what their body feels like inside when you're meditating, but some people can't. So I just want to check with you that you actually could feel that.
Now I'm a bit unsure.
Now you're a bit unsure, yeah. So
I don't tend to be very good with watching the bodily sensations.
Okay.
Even though I've done
Okay.
It's possible that it's not within the...
Maybe Maybe, yeah. Okay. So in that case, so what you can do is to spend more time with that practice to begin with, and paying particular attention to grounding your meditation very specifically in the sensations in your body, okay? So you spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of each meditation. And so you can go through each part of your body, and you go to your shoulder, for example, you say your left shoulder, and just spend a few seconds or a few minutes and just feel what that feels like. Yeah, and try to go very specifically through each part of your body, and you try to imagine it both through visualizing it, right? So you're actually envisaging those parts of the body as well as feeling them. So you can actually feel the tactile feeling of that part of your body. Yeah. So spend the time to get as clear an image of your body from inside as you possibly can. Okay, this is a really fundamental meditation skill, which will serve you well whatever kind of meditation that you're doing. Yeah, because there's a saying, I think James Joyce had a saying, what was it? Mr. Duffy lived a small distance from his body, which is kind of how we often get. And I'm not going to lie, living in the tech industry is great for doing that, right? Because, yeah, you kind of constantly absorbed in the code or whatever you're doing. So to get reacquainted with mindfulness in the body is really important. Yeah, so it's worth taking the time to do that. I'd also suggest that if you're having trouble doing that, to try doing some walking meditation as well. Yeah, and again, the same thing, just being very specific. Very simple, just feeling the sensations of your legs as you're moving. Yeah. Okay, let's see how we go. Doing metta meditation actually can really help with that. And one of the reasons why is because one reason why people become dislocated from their bodies is because they're not comfortable in their bodies. And sometimes that can be because we're holding trauma in the body, or because we're just doesn't feel good, or something like that. And so when we're doing metta, when we are holding the feeling of metta inside our body, we're making our own body a comfortable place to be. Yeah? So that's always worthwhile. All right? So let's see how we go. Yeah?
So could you just clarify something for me, please? In the Goenka tradition, the Goenka is adamant not to visualize the body parts, but now you, and I think in the Visuddhimagga as well, it says that you should.
Yeah.
Any reason why he insists not to do that?
I have no idea.
Could it be like, if you're imagining, you're kind of putting an imaginary thing on your body part?
It's a different meditation, as I understand it. Like, I've never done Goenka system personally, but as I understand it, he teaches that what they're doing is Vedananupassana, contemplation of feelings, right? So because you're contemplating just the feelings, then you want to feel just the feelings without the visualization part. So the visualization part comes more to like the Asubha and those kinds of contemplations. Yeah, so it's a slightly different take. Yeah. But yeah, my teacher at Mahachachai really kind of emphasized this. He would always say tang lu, tang hen, which means both knowing and seeing. And by knowing, he meant like the tactile sensation. By seeing, he meant the visualization. And as you go deeper into meditation, those two become one. So like when you have like a strong, we'll call it like a nimitta or a sign of your body, those two perceptions will fuse and they both become part of that same perception. But right now we're just talking about like the initial stages of just practicing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We're good? Any other questions? Okay, let's do some meditation. So sitting quietly. And letting your mind settle back into your body. And moving your mind through your body from the top of your head, noticing the feelings and sensations there, gradually moving the mind down and noticing the different sensations, tensions, energies. Down through your neck, into your shoulders, and then down your right arm, down as far as your hand, and then from your left shoulder down our upper arm, elbow, lower arm, wrist, and just being aware of the sensations in those different parts of your body. And coming back to your torso, feeling the sensations there. And feeling the awareness in the different parts of your torso as you move down to your hips, the legs, down to your feet. And trying to get the clearest idea that you possibly can of how your body feels like inside. If while doing that there's any part of your body that feels painful or tense, then just be aware of that. Notice it, okay. But don't get caught up on that. Don't try to solve it or make it go away. It's just part of you. Be aware of it. Okay, let it go. And now leaving your mind, focused in your heart, say to yourself the words, may I be happy, may I be happy, may I be happy. And keep on repeating those words as much as you can, evenly, steadily. clearly enunciating the words and putting your full heart into it, meaning every word. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy. Reminding yourself of that pure, deep, wholesome wish for your own happiness and well-being. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy. And as you continue, notice that along with the words of metta is something else. It's a feeling of metta. Soft, gentle feeling, full of warmth and love. And when you can feel that feeling, gently hold it in your mind, keeping it safe, keeping it close. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy. Letting that feeling of metta spread out and fill up your whole body, soaking through your body, filling every pore in your body with joy, pleasure, and happiness. And now moving to a loved person, keeping your mind just as it is, not moving your mind anywhere or changing anything, just introducing the name of that loved person into the words of metta. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. Keeping the mind with that feeling of metta that's soaking through your whole body. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. May that loved one be happy. So now coming near to the end of the meditation, we're going to come back step by step from the loved one to oneself. May I be happy. May I be happy. May I be happy. Letting the words of metta go, letting the feeling of metta fade away, and allowing the mind to come back to a neutral space, empty, open, and clear. And with the mind empty and clear, we can take a minute to reflect back over the meditation. It's always a good idea to do this because this is how we learn how the meditation works. How did you use your mind? What kinds of things were supportive for the meditation? What kinds of things were obstructive? How did the metta feel like for a loved one compared to how it was for oneself? And finally, we can dedicate the merit of our practice. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings realize Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.